Well, good morning, Tri-Cities. It's 9 o'clock on Friday, so it's time for Coffee with Karl. I'm Karl Dye from TRIDEC, and today we have a great host of panelists that represent some of our major events here in the Tri-Cities. I wanted to just really briefly say a few words about the slide that we just had up there. Brad Fisher was a tremendous leader for the Tri-Cities. As everybody knows, I'm new to the Tri-Cities, but really feel like I missed out on even getting to know him. An amazing leader, former mayor of city of Kennewick, former chairman of the board of directors for TRIDEC, one of the leaders for the nearshore reconveyance effort that's still ongoing. And just wanted to give a shout out to Brad and his family, that our thoughts and prayers are with their whole family. Tremendous loss for the Tri-Cities, tremendous loss for the Cougars, WSU Cougar backer and Packer backer for sure. So I just wanted to say a few words about Brad and get into our panel this morning. With major events in the Tri-Cities being affected by COVID, we've got a great panel this morning. I will start in no random order and introduce Lori Lancaster, the executive director of and Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the Benton-Franklin Fair and Rodeo. Did I say it right?
That is correct.
All right, thanks for joining us. We also have Kathy Powell, who is the event director for the Water Follies. Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. And we have, rounding out our panel, Corey Pearson, the executive director of Tri-Cities Convention Center, Toyota Center, and Arena. Good morning, Corey.
Hey, good morning.
Thanks for joining us this morning. So on Coffee with Karl, we have this little ceremony, I guess, to kick us off, where we talk about coffee. And we talk about the coffee you're drinking or the mug or something like that. I always kick it off. So especially with our remembering Brad Fisher, I've got, it's actually my wife's WSU Go mug. It's a Yeti. She is a Cougar. I'm a Costco Cougar. I get the t-shirt that's on sale at Costco because I'm an Idaho Vandal from across the Palouse. But that's my coffee story this morning. Corey, you're up on my screen. You want to say something about your coffee or mug or anything like that?
Paying a little homage to The Office. So one of my favorite shows. So I always gotta tip your hat to Michael Scott.
That's great. Hopefully during the course of this Coffee with Karl, you can come up with a few Michael Scott-isms to keep us on our toes. Kathy, how about you? What are you drinking this morning? Or do you have a mug or anything you want to talk about?
Well, coffee is my spirit animal, so
Wow.
My morning latte.
Wow, I don't think we'd even call it a mug. That's like a super tanker.
It's a super tanker, but it has a happy message. So good morning.
It really does. Good morning. And Lori, how about you? Do you have a mug or coffee story for us this morning?
I'm drinking tea, but I'm going to be camping later, so I have kind of a camping mug, but it's also...
Oh, it would be
nice.
better with Pendleton. I agree.
We have talked about moving this to later in the day so that we could have some alternative beverages before coffee. So, well, like I said, I'm brand new to the Tri-Cities. I'm just coming up on my 6-month anniversary. So I have not had a chance to experience any of the events that we have here in the Tri-Cities. So maybe to kick us off, can we go around and just give us an explanation of your event and talk about some of its impacts, just to get us kicked off. And since I think you'd earlier said, Kathy, that if you weren't on Coffee with Karl, if it was a normal year, you'd be down at the park right now. So can you kick us off and talk about Water Follies a little bit?
Yeah, so Water Follies would have been celebrating their 55th running this year. It started in 1966 with some of our local founding fathers. They brought in unlimited hydro racing to the Tri-Cities. So our event is unlimited hydroplane racing. We have some smaller classes, Grand Prix hydros. The vintage hydros are just amazing. And of course, the Over the River Air Show, which is really amazing because we're very fortunate typically to get military jets that are super exciting. We have around somewhere between 50 and 70,000 people that make it throughout the weekend. And now we bring about $3 million into the Tri-Cities economy for that weekend.
Amazing. And, we'll get into it, but such a a huge impact not to have that. I mean, I grew up in the Northwest, so I've always heard about the hydro races, and I was looking forward to experiencing them. And so I'll have to wait until next year.
Yes.
Yeah. And Lori, can you kind of give us an overview of what goes on with the fair and rodeo? It's not just, I mean, that's the major event, but obviously at the fairgrounds, you guys do different events there. But can you give us kind of an overview of what a normal year would look like?
Yeah, and I think, a little bit of education is always involved in explaining the fairs. So we're a nonprofit, so a lot different than most structures in the state of Washington. And we also don't own the fairgrounds, and we don't work there except for the month we lease it in August. So we don't run any of the off-season events. We're a nonprofit that serves the community year round. And so we are the only fair in Washington that serves 2 counties. And basically, we really actually serve 3 because we dip into Walla Walla for the Burbank School District. So those kids are come to our fair. And so it's the number 22 ranked rodeo in the United States in the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. And we have a fair that draws 120,000 people in 5 days. We call it the best week of summer. And we've actually trademarked that name now. And so no one else can use it. And we've been around since 1948 as a nonprofit. And so it's a really long run in the Tri-Cities. And we, like Kathy had hoped to be gearing up. Whenever I see, it's a weird thing to say, but whenever I see the porta potties move into Columbia Park, that like makes my stomach flip because I know next they're going to the fair. And so that's kind of our big like slide into August. And, we have a lot of similarities between our events, and I wish I was down the park right now rather than in my home office for I don't know how many days it's been, but a lot. And so we're just really missing the fact that we can't bring everyone together because what we do is sight and smell and taste and touch and experience. And you just can't recreate that in the environment that we're in some other form.
Yeah, definitely. And when I was a kid growing up, we had family in Walla Walla, so we used to go down to their fair and rodeo, and I can only imagine the Tri-Cities is obviously so much better and so much bigger, right?
Well,
not that we're competitive, but
we're all friends, but
okay.
we have a lot, being a nonprofit gives us a lot more leeway because we're able to fundraise and bring in, big entertainment and do things for the community that, they don't normally get to see or do or experience, like I said. And so that camaraderie in our industry is there, but we do always like to, see who's bigger and better and has, the newest stuff. And it's just sad that every fair in the state now has basically had to throw in the towel.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity, are most fairs in Washington like a subdivision of county government? Like, is that the way they're usually structured?
Yeah, that's the way they're usually structured. And then, in those cases, their funding is really at risk right now. A lot of fairs have had to completely lay off staff. We're not in that situation yet, but, we don't know what the future holds. But yeah, it's definitely, we're sponsor driven and admission driven for our revenue. And those things, aren't there. We've had some sponsors who've stepped up and donated their sponsorship for the year. So that's really helping us keep going.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Corey, how about, you kind of got 3 venues that you oversee. Can you give us just an idea of, what a normal year would look like and what some of those major events are?
Sure. Well, typically we slow down a little bit during the summer, just because of Kathy and Lori's events, that there's a lot of other events that happen during the summer. So we step back because it changes our model a little bit. But right now, the convention center, we'd be doing conventions all summer long. We'd still have 15 to 20,000 people through here, on a given summer. And, we have nothing. The Toyota Center has, normally we'd have our Jehovah Witness conference during the month of July. We'd have them here and a few other things. And we mothballed over there, I think like the 22nd of March, since we've had anything, we pulled the ice out. And just within the last couple of weeks, we took the ice out of the Toyota Arena because that is the only full year-round ice sheet in Southeast Washington. And we had to take that out just because we thought we'd be in phase 3 by now where we could be operating, and obviously we're not. So we did pull that out just to save a little bit on utilities, because I'm sure you can imagine what it costs to try to maintain an ice sheet in a desert. So it gets to be expensive. So we yanked it, but it's just, waiting to see. It's yesterday I was going through, we were signing contracts, and there's contracts that I've signed and have 4 different addendums on them now that we've moved them, and just, we sliding stuff back, trying to figure out when we get to go again.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I will say the first month I was here, I lived in a hotel. And so I was here during the week when there was Tri-City American game that was going on. And, people were like overflow parking over, on the other side of our office building, which is kind of across the way from the convention center. And it just looked like a major event. So, could see some of like the draw from some of those events that you have in the wintertime. So
yeah,
that's great. Yeah. So for anybody that just joined us, this is Coffee with Karl. If you have a question for our panelists today, where we're talking about major events and their impacts on the Tri-Cities, and maybe, what some of the ways that we can all work together to bring them out of this COVID situation. We are taking questions through the question and answer box at the bottom if you're on Zoom. If you're on Facebook Live, you can put a question in the comment box, and we'll get to all the questions that we can. But let's go back around the panel, and we hit on a little bit in the overview, but just talk about some of the impacts, whether it's people or events or dollars, just so we can kind of get a scope of this. And let's start this time with Corey.
Well, we have over 600,000 people that come through the campus every year. And, we see it from our, the hotels, the restaurants, everything that we're able to help keep busy. But the big thing is we're seeing a lot of our smaller vendors, and I know Kathy and Lori are seeing the same thing, that are starting to disappear, whether it's a decorator at the convention center, it's a rigging company that we use for the Toyota Center, or, some of the smaller skating camps and such at the Toyota Arena, that you see some of these smaller groups starting to go away, that, all of our models are going to change a bunch when we come back out of this and see what it is. There's some states that they're not locked down and they're doing events. So the encouraging part is that you hear that people are coming back. They are willing to come back, but everything's gonna be a little bit different. And the beauty of it is we're going to be allowed to have less people and higher costs, and just things that we have to do. Just trying to figure out how we're going to be able to sustain that and make it happen, because we are a quality of life and what we do. I mean, I moved here 11 years ago, which is hard to believe. It's already been 11 years, but within the first month, I was down on the river. I didn't know Kathy yet, but I already loved her. And, and then I turned around and the next month walked down, and Lori fattened me up with the elephant ears and corn dogs. And so you don't get a body like this not going to the fair. I'm going to tell you right now. So it's, it's all that stuff that makes this place such a great place to live, and it makes it tough.
Definitely. Thank you. Well, let's go next to Kathy. You want to tell us a little bit about, obviously not being able to have the hydroplane races this year is a huge impact, but just talk about how the COVID shutdown is affecting water follies.
Well, it starts with the boats. So the boats have only 5 sites that they go to, and one by one, those began to drop off. So they were holding out hope to be able to come to the Tri-Cities, and that didn't happen. So it essentially erased a whole racing series for the unlimited hydroplanes. I think the Grand Prix are in the same boat. As far as the air show, and we'll just talk about that later, almost all of the air shows have been canceled. Actually, as far as I know, 99% of them. The military, when they are selected to be on one of the traveling performance teams, that's a huge honor for them and significant to their careers. So it's, I believe, just a 2-year assignment. So a lot of those guys have missed out on either their last year or their first year, depending on where they're at in their cycle. So that's been a huge blow to the air show community, to the military, and so forth. As far as my event goes, we put in miles and miles of fencing, we put in miles and miles of tents and toilets and vendors, and we bring on groups and organizations to help us out with some of our tasks. So like the Kiwanis and the Rotary and the lacrosse kids and the Boy Scouts, they all earn money for their their special or whatever it is that they're working towards. And so it's been an impact for them. And then of course, just mental anguish from me, my board, my volunteers. I haven't been able to meet up with my board since March, and that's, you know, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I miss them. We're all Zoom meeting, and it's just a very strange time. I should be in the park right now watching the boats and hearing the boats. All of that is, it's just very strange.
And I think the thing we've talked about before, but this is so different from like the recession that we had, 10, 12 years ago, because it just was so immediate and it just shut everything down. Like you said, it wasn't like a gradual slowdown or something like that. It was just immediate, and all meetings stopped, and such a immediate impact on everybody.
Exactly.
For sure. Yeah. Laura, you talked about it a little bit more, but can you give us a little bit more and just talk about the impact of missing the fair and rodeo? And I think the way you described that you're a nonprofit and that you lease the facilities from the counties, that this is your big event. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think, I've been telling people this for years, but we get one shot. And so I might be kind of demanding in my contracts and things, but we get 5 days, and we don't get a do-over. And so there's no having the fair in January. There's no having the fair in April. So we're, more than a year out from being able to really operate again. And, it's an event that last year we actually commissioned an economic impact study, and the output in Benton County was 18.5 million for that week. Wow. And so I think the thing for us and for our board, a lot of people said, well, what made the final decision? Well, we didn't get to make a decision. The decision was made for us. We just had to announce that, yeah, we know we can't have a fair. And that was the heartbreaking part, because if you talk about the trickle down, like Kathy mentioned, the service groups, the Young Marines, the Kiwanis, the Rotary, all these groups, like the Rotary, we're their biggest fundraiser of the year when they have the elephant ear booth, and they bring in 200 and some volunteers, and they crank out elephant ears for five days a year, and it's a huge impact. We are actually launching something called the Fair Cares Fund on August 1st, and that we have selected 10 groups that we think are impacted the most, that really don't have a means to replace that money in another form. And so we're going to be doing some fundraising to pass through to those 10 groups in hopes that we can make the overall impact to the community a little bit less harsh, so they can have some money to still do some of the good things they do year round. But it's, it's a challenge. We're in a financial position ourselves where we, run a $3 million event and a budget, and we had to give all that money back that we had taken in this year. And so we think that's the right thing to do. And anyone that requested a refund got one. And then a lot of people were able to still hold on to their concert tickets, and some vendors were able just to roll over their money until next year. Same with some sponsors, but it's a challenge all around. But we look at the big picture, and it's not just about, oh, poor us, and our little staff that's holding together. Normally we'd have 10 people in our office and be rocking it right now. It'd be a month out from our event, but it's down to the bare bones, and we're trying to figure out how we can still do something and bring a little bit of that spirit of the fair to the community, even though we can't have a fair this year.
Yeah. Those are great points. And I think, a question I wanted to ask, because we're at TRIDEC, we're involved in a couple different efforts, working with Benton County and now Franklin County on some CARES Act funding, and we have set aside some of it for nonprofits, and then obviously most of the money set up for profits. But just while I have you guys on, do you have any ideas about, what are ways that maybe all of us working together could help support some of those, especially for the nonprofit volunteer organizations with the, from the Kiwanis and Rotary and the Boy Scouts and the different groups. But any ideas, or I'll just open it up for anybody that wants to throw an idea out there. And I really like your Fair Cares. Is it Fair Care or Fairs Cares?
Fair Cares.
Sorry, Fair Cares. And before we get done, maybe you can give us that, if there's like a website or something, so we can help promote it and get it out there. But any ideas about how we could help, and maybe on the for-profit and nonprofit side, like you said, the vendors, the riggers, the people out there, and obviously, payroll protection or these grants that we're doing might not sustain it for very long, but anything, you guys have any ideas on how we can help or what we can do to try to support kind of the infrastructure of your events?
Crickets.
I think, we've seen some businesses be able to find a path, like decorating companies. Some of them have been able to come onto the scene with PPE equipment and shields and different things that they're installing in places they didn't think, whether that be hospitals or testing tents or those kind of things. But for a lot of people in our industry, I mean, we deal with people that are jugglers and have pony rides and all these things. Like our carnival is mothballed. I mean, this is a company that, has survived for 4 generations and, they've been mothballed. They don't know what's going to happen. The number of businesses dependent on the events industry is mind blowing, and they're literally shut down. Like I said, we don't have an alternative for a lot of what we do. No one can have a carnival, in Washington state. No one can have pony rides. Like all these people are just sitting here. Like I know a lot of them have had to find jobs, like one's working for a wine distributor and one's doing this because what they had built their lives and careers and businesses around is suddenly, the carpet's been ripped out from under them. And so I think supporting any businesses that we can, a lot of businesses have booths at the fair, and some of them book 90% of their leads for the year by having those booths at the fair, and they don't have that as a platform. And so, we'd love to find some creative ways to help them, but at the same time, our hands are kind of tied with the health department and other regulations that don't allow us to do what we know how to do best.
But I think one of the things too, Karl, that's it doesn't make any of the statistics because with whether it's the fair or the water follies or us, I mean, we have 250 to 350 part-timers that we work here every year. And a lot of those folks now, they don't have that second job. So even though, they're still employed, but they're all underemployed. Some people are going to rely on that booth to get them through the summer, that they get that income. And there's just a lot of those people out there that they don't make the statistics because they still have their other job, but now they're way underemployed. I mean, even talking with our referees for our youth hockey and our leagues during the summer, I mean, there's, a couple $1,000 a month that we're not cutting checks for and things like that. There's just a lot of people out there that are hurting, but they're not making the graphs.
That's a great point because we all, obviously see the unemployment numbers and everything else. And then from the feds to the state government to locally, there's focus on those big numbers. And that's a great point, Corey, that there's people that fall between the cracks, and being able to have them qualify for programs or assistance or something, just to think what we're all looking for is surviving until we can get back to that reopening phase. And obviously with all your events, that's a further phase because of the, group gatherings and those type of things, which may be a phase 4, I would guess.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Well, we've got some questions coming in. Let's get into those. And we've got one about, you've all talked about sponsors for different events. And is there any ideas that you have on ways that people in the community can support your sponsors? So I think, Lori, you might have mentioned even earlier that some of your sponsors had agreed to go ahead and make their sponsorship, their donation, just to help out with your nonprofit. But are there any ideas about sponsors, that maybe if we help support their business in the community, that, that some of those dollars can keep on flowing? Any sponsorship ideas?
Well, we highlighted early on in the shutdown all of our sponsors who could operate or had the potential to operate soon. And we actually went and we didn't ask them for a donation. We went and purchased, whether it was gift cards, haircuts, whatever it could be. And we did a giveaway for every single one of those that made sense on a platform like Facebook. And so we did that to kind of bring awareness to the sponsors who are out there who we thought were hurting. I mean, we have a ton of sponsors. That's how we survive. And anyone from like Western Restaurant Supply, to restaurants that weren't allowed to open, we wanted to be able to say, hey, here's someone you can support who supports the fair, and they really need the help right now. And so we did that early on. I think we'll be showcasing some sponsors who are going to opt into the Fair Cares Fund and show people, that maybe those are businesses we'd like them to support. But, for us, we're all a community, and, anyone you can help locally is good for all of us.
That's a great point. Kathy, any of your sponsors? I mean, I think you guys have like naming events, right, for some of your venues. Is that kind of the way your sponsorships works with the Water Follies?
Pardon me, I didn't get the question.
Oh, again, I'm new, so please forgive my ignorance, but you guys do have sponsors. I think, don't you have like naming events for some of the different venues in Water Follies, and then, being able to support them?
Indeed. Well, Hapo Community Credit Union is our title sponsor for the boat races, the Columbia Cup and the air show. And, we do try and get them exposure, and they do a great job on their own, and they're just a fantastic partner. But CG Public House, we're always trying to share the information that they're doing. They're very innovative and very active in their marketing approach and doing well, and they're a great partner. And Columbia Distributing, the unions, the IBEW and the Local 598 guys. So we talk about them a lot and try and get them the exposure. And I think the most heartwarming piece is they all want to stand by us. When we made the call to let them know that we were going to have to cancel, all of them sent their condolences and said, we're here for you when you need us. So that our community is really a giving community, and they support these projects. They understand the quality of life and they understand tourism. So that's been amazing. It's very reassuring.
That's great. Well, that, speaks obviously really strongly about your organization, and then the sponsors, and then it sounds like there's a collective spirit and understanding, like we just have to look forward to next year. We have to try to survive, make it through this gap, and then look forward to an even better show next year. That's great and really encouraging.
Yeah.
And Corey, I guess you guys have so many different event levels and sponsorships. That's kind of a complicated question for you, maybe.
Yeah, we've got everything from suite holders to naming sponsors, and the amazing thing is we've felt the same thing as Lori and Kathy. When all of this happened, and we got over the initial shock that this was going to last more than 2 weeks, which was my first inclination, and then I was really wrong. But we sat down, and I had Toyota and Redder and Company came to me right away and said, hey, what do we do? How do we get out there? And so we, sat down, we started working, and we did some stuff with Second Harvest, and we did some food drives out of here. But just to show, but it was so amazing, from, the suite holders to people that have signs on the concourse, people calling and just saying, hey, what can we do to help? Or we're here for you. And, Coke started dropping stuff off for us. And it was just, it's that kind of stuff that helps you, get a little faith back in humanity after, some of the bad days. But it's trying to do things, because that was some of the short term, but now we're into more of a long-term haul, and just figuring out how are we fair to everybody, and making sure that that we're able to represent the companies and the people that we need to. And we're working there right now with a lot of different groups. So, but everybody has just been so understanding. And, I think that's the only thing that helps us all sleep at night is this isn't our fault. It's not that, oh, I screwed this up or I missed that, but it's, we got handed this big pot of stew, and now we just got to deal with it. So we're just trying to get through it.
That's great. Well, and that reminds me of, like say earlier in the shutdown, weren't you guys able to host like with food bank and some food giveaways, and actually maybe used back when you had the ice sheet in that
Yep.
use some of the refrigeration for, you want to just talk about that really quickly? Because I think that was a huge and a great event.
Well, it was, and and I got to give my staff a ton of credit, because we could have just kind of curled up and rolled away, but all of us, the three of us on here, our staff is used to. We don't work at half pace. We like to go. It's like you burn it and let's go. So we had all of our staff. We had 500,000 boxes delivered to the convention center that we built. We were building about 4,000 boxes a day, just literally folding and making the boxes. we were taking deliveries of, potatoes and onions in the bulk truck. And, we did 120,000 pounds of potatoes. But we stored apples and pears in the Toyota Arena on the ice sheet to keep them cool. We had potatoes and onions in the Toyota Center. And we're still dealing with those flies. But all the dry goods and things for the convention center. But over I think it was 7 weeks, we served 6,000 families out in the parking lot, and we gave over 800,000 pounds of food out of the parking lot here. And it was funny because the staff worked all week to get everything built for the giveaway on Wednesday. And we had a lot of volunteers come and help give away. I mean, Toyota, Redder and Company, and Apple all had volunteers here in Coke that were helping give stuff away. And I went back inside, and all of my staff was, at the window, like a little kid watching the snowy day. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? They're like, well, can we help give away too? Because they were doing all the work and they didn't get to go. Oh, well, yeah, let's go. So everybody got to go out to the curb and get to help hand stuff out and get to see the rubber meet the road. But it was nice. I mean, we got cards from people, getting the goods, but Second Harvest, I can't say enough about what they do. Chelsea and her group over there were amazing. I mean, we put it together in 3 days. We sat down on a Monday and Wednesday, got our first truckloads of stuff. So it was pretty awesome.
That's really awesome. I think that, all those examples, especially about your sponsors and kind of those calls that you got, and then the stuff that's coming up like Fair Cares are great examples of our community, right? Like, even though we're in different jurisdictions and different counties and stuff, we really are one community. And, for me being a newcomer, it's just amazing to see how we come together in this kind of a crisis and support each other. And the goal would be that we keep on supporting each other while we get through this situation. So we got a couple more questions. One for Lori there from Facebook. We have a question about the Fair and Rodeo date and like moving it to a different month. She's intrigued, or this person's intrigued, why you said April isn't an option. My guess is that it probably is like your logistic supply chain or something, right? Like moving it to spring or something like that. Can you talk a little bit about that, Lori, and why, it's really the fair's meant for August and that's the way it works?
Yeah, our dates are designed by the State Department of Agriculture. And so there's sort of a natural progression. So before us is Moses Lake, then Kennewick, then Walla Walla. And so a lot of those vendors are routed, like you're saying. And also we don't own the facility. And in April, there's horse racing at the fairgrounds. So we couldn't, even if we could lease it, then we wouldn't, because that's their time. So they have April and May. And so, there's a lot of reasons why we couldn't move it. But really, like you said, supply chain, we're not so much governed by the Department of Agriculture since we're a nonprofit, but we still are in some ways. And so some fairs have moved their dates over the top of others, and that's just not a thing we want to get into. We're all in this together. And we're designed for the end of August. The animals are purchased and bred to be harvested at the end of August. And so that's something we're dealing with this year is we have 508 kids signed up with animals to sell at the auction, and we are still going to be able to market those animals for them on August 28th, which would be during the fair, the same day that we normally would. But it's, logistically a whole different animal when you're not running a fair at the same time. And so we're working through that process now, but it's just not realistic given our lease of the facility, other events that are there, and how we fall in the dates with the rest of the fairs in the state.
You bet. So for the auction, are you going to do like an online or a virtual auction or something, or?
We're actually doing an auction, like a livestock auction. So we have a permit like any other livestock auction in the state. So it's not it's not an event. It's an actual marketing of the animals. And so we'll bring them in one day, sell them, and then ship them out that night. And so it's really a way. There's no place in this community that could absorb that many animals. There's no, like, if you want to get an animal butchered right now, some shops are pushing out till February of 2021. It's been such a thing during the shutdown for people to buy locally. There's been a lot of animals available locally. And so, we're talking, over 200 head of pigs. There's no place else you can hold 200 head of pigs, for 24 hours other than the fairground. So We're still working out the details, but that is, people will be able to add on is what we call it. So if your neighbor kid has a pig and you want to throw $100 on his pig, you'll be able to do that online. There'll be proxy bidding. And then there'll also be a fund for the auction where if you don't know any of these kids or you don't want to purchase an animal to have in your freezer, you'll still be able to throw some money in there. And then we'll take that and we'll put it across the ones that had the lowest prices to kind of raise everybody up to the same price. Because last year we ran $1 million sale.
Wow.
Largest in the state by far. And so we don't want to go backwards, but we know it's not going to be the same. And we know we won't have 500 animals. We're doing a survey right now to see how many still have their animals and are wanting to bring them through that auction. And so we'll have more information on that in the next couple of weeks, but it's something for us to look forward to. And it's something for us to do for the kids.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear that you guys are able to come up with that alternative, because like you said, it's the kids have a big investment. And so even if they're not able to show them, at least to, give them a financial payback on that investment and complete that cycle anyway. But that's great. We've got a question for Corey. This comes from John Neal. And first of all, he wants to say that you're obviously due for a haircut.
Oh,
and, yeah. Full disclosure, I am too. So it's not coming from me, it's coming from John. He's wondering if you could talk about the Toyota Center entertainment and canceling of some of these traveling shows and other event centers canceling, and then how that affects the circuit, and kind of maybe just describe a little bit, Corey, how that works, and then what's this bigger impact of not just the local performances, but then kind of the nationwide effect.
Sure. Well, the one thing is anything that's within 8 hours of us is competition. I mean, I still go back to my first 6-8 months out here when, I'd come from Illinois, and when a show would come through and I'd get a, opportunity to bid on some shows, I'd bid a little bit low and they'd come back. And if I passed, no big deal, I'd get them coming back. And then, you get out here and it's kind of funny because they're coming up into the Pacific Northwest. And if you can't get a deal done, all of a sudden they're gone. They can skip the Pacific Northwest and, all of a sudden they're in California and you're like, what happened? So, it's all routing and, and out here if they can't get Seattle and Portland, a lot of times they don't come up and through here. So they're trying to pick stuff up, or, what we found is we found a little bit of a niche with groups kind of coming through and they're looking for one more play, either going into Canada and then shooting back east, or coming out of Canada, then heading back down into California and stuff. So we've been working some of those. That's what we were able to do with Old Dominion, which feels like 4 years ago, but it was just in February that they only had one US play, and it was here. Because they loved it. They spent a couple extra days here. They hit our wineries. They loved our area. So they wanted to come back, which was the coolest thing ever. We did a couple days rehearsal and they got to hang out. It's just, there's a lot that goes into the routing. So, that we're always fighting, trying to make stuff work. And you've got the casinos to deal with and, some of those things. So it's just all of that playing together that you can put together the best offer you can on a show. But if Boise doesn't come through, or Missoula, or, even Penticton and Abbotsford, I mean, there's a lot of different things. If they don't come through too, that we're just kind of left out a little bit. So,
yeah. And so with that, kind of that circuit and the way that the shows come through with COVID shutdowns, are you seeing a drop off in that circuit, and even maybe, I don't know, production companies or something? Is there the bigger impact?
Right now, everything that it looks like is, it's kind of funny because there's, as in everything, there's the hierarchy, but all the B+ and A shows, kind of the word is you're not going to see anything from them till the fall of 2021 probably. Mm-hmm. But those B's on down, they're like the rest of us. They need money. So, we'll see more of them. There could probably be some more shows coming out where they're going to be a little more anxious to work than some of the others. So, which is good for us. Our building isn't big enough for us to get, a lot of those B+ and ups. We've gotten a few of them, but it has a lot to do with luck and some routing. But so yeah, it's going to be a different landscape, and some of the bigger promoters, they may pull back for a while, which is going to let some of the smaller guys, because we've got some smaller promoters out here that do a great job, that we've got a really good relationship with, so that we can hope to keep some of the shows coming back through. But we've still got a lot of comedy on the books for this fall, but don't know. We still have Joe Coy, Trevor Noah, and Jeff Dunham, but in third and fourth quarter. But
yeah,
as of today, who knows? But we're all just keeping an eye on it. And comedy's a little easier route because those are fly-ins. They don't have to have necessarily, but
yeah.
Different things.
Yeah, no, thank you. Kathy, maybe a similar question to you, and you talked about it a little bit, that in hydroplane racing, there's just 5 venues, I think you said. So do you have concerns, or is there a discussion within the industry that, not having the circuit this year is going to affect even racing teams or sponsors or anything like that? Are there any concerns in that area as well?
Well, they've been struggling regardless of the COVID as far as sponsorships go and so forth. But, I'm hearing from a few of them, they're trying to just at least get out on the water and run their equipment. So there was a lot of new boats purchased, or there was some new boats brought online, some new sponsors going into this year. Hopefully they'll have some patience and they'll hang with us until 2021 when they can get out there and get racing again.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to bring out in this discussion, that it's not just your venue or your event, that there is this supply chain of production companies, of infrastructure really that it takes to pull off your events that will be impacted, and then that might have an effect in future years. Hopefully not. Hopefully everybody can get through the gap and make it that way. That's a good question. A couple more questions. We got one for Corey, and I think you talked a little bit about this, but are you seeing, hearing, or getting calls for future bookings of events and the time frame? I mean, you talked about comedy coming on third and fourth quarter this year, but and maybe even rebooking, are you able to roll maybe into next year for events or even conventions and stuff like that?
Yeah, the conventions right now, we saw some initial stuff for the summer cancel, but most everything for the fall and first, second quarter next year is holding tight. We're redoing some terms to kind of take some of the guarantee numbers off and do a little risk share, more or less, because usually we say, hey, we're going to give you this price if you have this many people and this many heads and beds and that kind of stuff. And we're softening some of that because there's so much unknown. On the touring side, next year we're getting holds, we're getting calls, still getting quite a few. It's hard because every show that we do right now, normally you do a map and say, here's the number of seats that we can have, here's your gross potential, but now we're having to do, here's what it might look like with 75%, and here's what it might look like if we have to do this. And so it's odd, and that's where a lot of them are holding back and saying, hey, till we get to 100%, we're gonna just sit tight. And that's where it's the unknown side is just so bizarre that, I'd almost prefer here's the date. We're not going to do anything till this date, and then you can plan for that. Because right now we just keep moving the ball down the road, and it's just weird. Yeah,
totally. Well, I think that's a good segue for us to give a plug for what we can all do to help all of your businesses, and that is, we all know about the Mask Up. I think our masking numbers are really going up, but then also, when we're not at work, when we're not in a retail setting and wearing that mask, don't have big gatherings, because we've all talked about the health district a little bit, but that's what they found is that, if we are still at work, we're doing a good job of masking up and using the social distancing protocols. But then a lot of the spread right now is because people are gathering and they are having groups and parties and stuff like that. And I think for this, our discussion today, it's really critically important that people understand that we're all frustrated that we can't go to the water follies and the rodeo and, go see different events at the convention center. But there's things that we can do in our own lives that'll help you guys at least know when we're going to come out of this, right? Like if we can bend this curve and we can start to flatten out our infection numbers, we're going to get to future phases. We're going to see more restaurants open. We're going to see more, potential sponsors for your events open. And so I just want to give that plug while we're on here today to say, let's all remember to, don't mix without a mask on. Let's keep on using those social distancing. Those are things that we can all do in our lives to help all of your businesses and events. And I think it's the least that we can do because we love all of your events so much. So I'll just give that plug, and maybe we can shift into talking about the future. And, maybe if we can go around again and just talk about once we do get out of COVID, and get to a more normal year, and for some years, looking forward to next year, especially, but are there any new things that'll be coming up at the Fair Rodeo or Water Follies or, I think, Corey, you guys, I read an article about some of your future plans. So is there anything, once we do get back to normal and maybe fire up the Fair and Rodeo next year, Lori, that you could talk about that maybe were on your plans that, got delayed or anything like that? Anything new coming up in the future?
I think sort of the unknown for us right now is finances. We're a year without revenue. And so that's how we start working for the next year. And so, like I said, we're happy that we were able to roll over our entertainment lineup. We, always have some cool things planned. Obviously, we want to keep some of those to ourselves and be able to announce them next year. But I think it's, the real challenge is like Corey said, the ball just keeps moving, and it's different in our business than it is in a lot of other businesses, because you're talking phase 3 now of 10 people. We're an event of 120,000. I mean, there's a big, huge gap. And so what does the future hold for us is I think a lot more uncertain, given that we're a once a year event. And, we feel like we're going to survive this, but a lot of people in our industry feel like they can survive it for a year, but 2 years is a no-go, and so we need to find a way through this and out the other side so we can get back to the business that we're in. And, I was on a call with the health department the other day, and he said, yeah, we really haven't done a good job of working with entertainment businesses yet. And I said, don't think of us as entertainment. Think of us as economic. We had people come to the fair from 31 states last year. We had people come from 179 cities in Washington, 40 cities in Eastern Oregon. I mean, this is a driver of the economy. This is a driver of jobs. This keeps businesses going. And so we love all the bells and whistles and the fluff. I mean, I love to say, that my job is working with, cotton candy and jugglers. And I mean, it's fun, but it's also very serious business that supports a whole network of other businesses. And so we have to think of it like that, not just, it's just an event and, we don't get to have it, no big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal to a lot of people. You're talking about kids who, this might have been their last year in 4-H. They missed that final, moment of culmination of their 9 years of work that they've done, so it's heartbreaking on a lot of levels. And I think people need to understand that it's a business like everybody else, and you have to be economically viable from year to year to keep going. And I think for us, we want to come out of this and we want to have the biggest and best fair ever, but we, have to also be realistic. And we don't know what that support level is going to look like from sponsors in 2021. Some of them have been impacted, and so there's a whole bunch of unknowns right now, and ways that we would normally be cash flowing through the winter, selling tickets for the next year. Well, we sold those tickets already. We're rolling them over. So that stream is now evaporated in a large part. And so we're trying to find ways to reinvent and reimagine our off season and how we progress to next August.
Okay. Well, I think, like we said, we'll look forward to the Fair Cares, and if we can help get the word out and then spread the word, and then obviously all your sponsors as well, right? So that at least at some level you can keep some of that base, and then hopefully answer those questions, because we're all looking forward to getting back to the Fair and Rodeo for sure. Yeah. Kathy, anything that, was that you had kind of in the works or changes or something bigger and better that maybe is going to be put off, but maybe we can look forward to in the future?
Well, being one to not just call it quits, tenacious is one of the descriptions I have. I'm really trying to do an air show, and I think that we can do that and still be safe. We're looking at a September date. It's been very interesting because I'm getting emails from the Air Combat Command, which is the scheduling unit for the Air Force. And I will never see this again in my lifetime, so I can't give up. But I get an email one day and he says, okay, we can send the A-10 And what do you think about an F-35? If you do it this, I can get you F-35. You don't want an F-35, I can get you F-16. You want an F-18? How about an F-15? And usually I'm on my knees begging for these amazing jets. So I just felt like there was a way, and talking through some of the logistics and not being able to get people together, we started talking about a drive-in air show. And there is some, there's policies out there for a drive-in movie. And so using some of those criteria and then maybe making them a little stricter, clamping them down. I am working with the health department right now to try and put that plan together. It hasn't been approved, but we're working out. So in parallel, I'm scheduling airplanes, I'm scheduling the airport, I'm scheduling the river, and I have my fingers crossed that the health department will give us a blessing. So stay tuned.
Oh, that's awesome. Is it too early to describe what that would look like? I mean, like, would it be at the airport and the planes would be parked and you could drive through and kind of look at them from your car? Or would you go like to a drive-in movie theater type area and then they'd fly by? Or like, what would that look like?
Well, so my vision is to use the parks again. That's where our air box is, the aerobatic box, which is where all their performance has to take place. So you would drive in, no more than 5 to a car, right? Because we can't get together with more than 5 people right now. So no more than 5 to a car. We would have extremely oversized areas to park your car in. You'd have to stay with your car. I'm not saying that you have to stay in, but you have to stay with your car. The show would be a couple of hours, 3 hours, something like that. We'd use Wade Park Pasco and Columbia Park Kennewick. All the tickets will be sold online, so there's no cash exchanging hands, and you just drive in, get your ticket scanned, and go in, pull into your parking spot, stay with your car, enjoy the show, and leave. And so hopefully that will work. I'm hoping, ready to work on that.
That sounds awesome.
Somebody hides in the trunk, just saying.
It was funny because we were talking about it and we were, discussing, what if the crowds got a little unruly or what if they didn't follow the rules. And someone mentioned, well, we got an A-10, so no hiding in the trunk.
And would it just be, like current military planes, or any chance in some warbirds participating or something?
Well, so the Air Force likes to do a heritage flight. So they have the current aircraft flying with the historical aircraft. What would be really amazing, so that's typically been, we'll bring a Mustang out and the Mustang will fly with them. I've seen shows now where the F-35 is flying with the F-22, flying with the F-16 and the Mustang. So,
wow.
So it's just, there's some cool possibilities. And then the Navy bringing the F-18, they call it a legacy flight. More than likely that would bring the Sky Raider over, which is the precursor to kind of like the A-10, but also the F-18. So we had scheduled the Erickson Aircraft Collection, which is a museum in Madras, to bring some planes up. So just trying to keep a reasonable amount of time to hold people's attention to fly these amazing aircraft. I'm so excited to see the F-35 fly. I can't stand it. So lots of possibilities.
That's awesome. We'll keep our fingers crossed, and we'll keep on wearing our masks and not go to parties. So maybe we can all help out that you can cross that threshold. That's awesome.
Yeah, please wear your mask. Don't go out and mess around. Stay safe.
There you go. Corey, what about you? I read some articles kind of getting ready for today, but I think you guys had some expansion plans on the books, and obviously I would assume this has affected those, but what's the outlook there?
Well, I would say that our plans right now, they haven't stopped, but they are I'd say more in the pause phase. From the private sector, the investment pool has shrunk significantly, with the oil prices. And they said one of the guys gave a presentation, and it was online, but they said, well, let's see, there's the economy, the shutdown, oil prices, and now you've got protests and streets burning. yeah, we're gonna hold off. And it's like, yeah, I can see that happening, but everything is still moving. There's I think everything slid back a little bit, but I think that's good for all of us. It just gives us a chance to see how this is going to come back and what it's going to look like. But so we haven't given up. I can see it happening. The project that they're looking at is amazing. We need to expand the convention center, and even with this hiccup, we've worked through 9/11. We've worked through a lot of different things, and we always come out on the other side stronger. And we're looking forward to doing that. It's just, when do we get to start the recovery is the big question, and that's what we're holding off for, and then we can start putting the timelines back together.
You bet. And just really quickly, John Neal had another question about
I don't
sales.
You just can't do it.
You don't answer, John. Okay. He had a very simple question about sales tax revenue, and I think that that flows into and again, being new, you got to forgive me that I don't have all the names down, but into the funding agency for the convention center. So is that, but some of the projects you're just talking about were private investment versus like the sales tax related, or how does that work out?
Yeah, we have a sales tax that comes into us that helps fund. We get 0.033% of what the state collects in Kennewick comes to us to help fund the convention center. And we have seen that drop. The funny part is it hasn't dropped as much as we thought it would. It has held a little stronger. I think a lot of it has to do with the, some of that the stimulus checks and stuff, that there has been some spending. It just hasn't, unfortunately, been restaurants and bars and whatever else. But it's been holding fairly decent, but there is that 2 and 3 month lag getting it back from the state. So we'll start to see next month. I think we'll really start to see where those numbers are going to be for a while. And once we recover, it's going to be 3-4 months to come back out of that.
You bet. Well, we really reached the end of our program. We just got a couple minutes left, but I'd like to thank each of you for coming on. And, all of your events and venues are such a huge part of the Tri-Cities. I think we're all behind getting back to normal, getting, into these future reopening stages and getting back to normal, especially as the events come up. But maybe we want to go around the panel one time. And if you want to make a closing statement and a plug for anything, and from TRIDEC's perspective, we want to help out all we can with social media, any type of fundraising or events or awareness out there. But let's start with Lori for a closing statement.
I think I would just thank everyone for the support. We have had amazing support. People are every day emailing and appreciating the fact that we're trying to continue on with events for the youth that are involved in the fair, and we'll be doing some virtual shows for some of the kids that have other types of projects. And so I would just ask people to watch our social media channels. That's really going to be the way we're communicating right now, because it's cost effective. Yeah. And we can do it, remotely and ourselves. And so we have, we're going to have some fun things coming up. We are certainly going to be missing, the end of August, but I'm hoping we'll be able to surprise and delight people with a few things that will still keep the fair in their thoughts. And we just appreciate everyone. And I appreciate, the renewed relationship we have with other event producers in Tri-Cities. It's really kind of brought us all together.
That's great. Thank you, Lori. Corey, how about you? Closing remarks?
Well, I think the big thing is just this helps remind all of us that we all have a Dust Devil story, a fair story, a waterfowler story, a story from an Americans game. It's like, all these things that we're talking about are, yes, they're businesses for us, and they do, help fund a lot of different community events and groups. But, we're really, it's part of our community, and it's what makes our community great, I think, is everything that we do, because the things you can't, oh, look at that, trumped by a dog. This is terrible.
Just a minute, because she didn't bark.
Yeah. But it's just, it's those kind of things that, we can't lose track of what everybody does to keep our community great, from these wonderful ladies that are here with us to everything else. So I just really appreciate everybody in the community.
Thanks, Corey. Kathy, how about you? Do you have a closing statement?
Well, I do want to thank our community for being so kind and supportive. When we were making our announcements on social media, everybody was really amazing to support us and be kind. And so I'm so thankful for that. And also, if you're missing out on boat racing, H1 Unlimited on Facebook is doing an e-league. So I think Saturday noon, there'll be, the drivers will be driving video game hydroplanes on the,
Oh, cool.
on the Happo Columbia Cup course. So you can get your fix that way, but really sincerely, thank you from the Tri-City Water Follies.
Thanks, Kathy. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. I think it's been a great discussion, and we look forward to getting into future phases, getting back to our events. And for everybody out there watching, don't forget to wear your mask and stay home and stay safe. Let's get the Tri-Cities recovered so we can get back to our great events.